I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, January the 18th. How much higher is this fat cattle market going to be this week? We know that it's going to be higher. I think that the board could be limit down on Friday and it'd still be higher. It's just we've sucked so much weight off these cattle with the last storm that we had coming through. I've run out of superlatives to talk about how muddy a lot of these yards are. And the yields are down, everything's down. Everything's about tonnage when you're talking about fat cattle, and we've sucked a lot of tons off of these cattle. Your packers are kind of short bought, and it's going to be higher. We've already seen Iowa sell a handful of cattle at 125. That would be a buck higher from last week's top. So just where we're going to land, we don't know. It's probably going to be at least 127, if not more than that. 130 sounds pretty darn good. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how much higher it gets. But look at the board on Thursday, February live cattle futures down 72 cents at 127.10, which was actually kind of a relief for a lot of these hedged feeders. It slowed down the margin calls a little bit, and they were thankful of that. But April live cattle futures down 82 cents at 126.90. January feeder cattle down $2.35. I tell you what, these feeder cattle have dropped like a rock, both cash and futures this week, and it's all due to the weather. As much as the bad weather has helped your fat cattle market, it's hurt your feeder cattle market, as it's just all the outlets are plugged up with mud, and guys couldn't take cattle if they wanted them. If they wanted to, and they just don't want to. March feeder cattle contracts down $1.77 at 142.92. Your fat cattle in the 5-area feeding region, negotiated cash is less than 1,000 head, so we haven't sold anything. And like I said, there was a few deals at 125 in Iowa. That would be a buck higher than last week's top, and I don't know that they got much 124 in Iowa, so it'd be more than that there, but they're willing to give a $1.25. There's a little bit of 197 has been paid. There's some rumor talk about a lot of these packing houses thinking that they're going to have to slow the schedule next week because due to the shutdown, there's not going to be enough inspectors to be there. I don't know about that. I've lived through and been involved in some of these government shutdowns before, and when it comes to health and security and things like that, it never has bothered anything like that. But I think that might be just a ploy or a little bit of a scare to try to suck some of this bullishness out of the fat cattle market, because everybody knows it's going to be higher. But let's look at your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late on Thursday sitting at 140.13. So we're going to drop off of the 140s now. That's significant. Your real-time index is going to be in the 130s somewhere, and you know what that means. Your CME cash feeder cattle index eventually, when it gets kind of up to date and modern here with what's going on, it's going to be down in the 130s also. But that 140.13 on Thursday late was 64 cents lower than Wednesday's late call there. So just dropping like a rock. And that is the 7-day moving average with a lot of cattle in it. And that just goes to show you how much we're pulling down. Because you can't get over $1.40 for true feeder cattle in their feeder calves, but feeder cattle weights of cattle in the southern plains, you can't get $1.40 anymore. Now you can in the northern plains some, where they're not quite as muddy and it's cold enough where they're kind of standing on some solid ground or at least solid ice, and you've got farmer feeders that are coming into the market. You can get that 140 and above, and we'll show you some of those quotes here in a minute. But Pratt, Kansas on Thursday, 2,100 head. You're seeing kind of a light run when they should be having 4,000 or 5,000 head. It's muddy even there. It's muddy all around, guys. And you look at the quotes there. Feeder steers similar to what Dodge was and what El Reno was on Wednesday, but feeder steers $2 to $8 lower. And that is the market. Feeder heifers lightly tested, but sure lower. Same thing with calves. You look at Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas, 2,500 head there, just called sharply lower. And a light run really for them this time of year too. They should have been having more cattle, but just a big wet snow coming across there and making it tough to get cattle out. Now you get further up into the northern plains there. Mitchell, South Dakota had a monster sale on Thursday. Pulled this report, on in the evening on Thursday. They were still selling cattle. Had close to 7,000 when I pulled this. Been selling them all day long, but the trends are not bad at all. Only $1 to $2 lower on a heavy supply there, so that's a strong market. You look at this market on Cattle Market Central that I pulled, the only thing that's available, and you see that where the cattle are the heaviest tested, those changes from the previous week's weighted average, not bad at all. A lot of times just $1 and not even $2 lower, and that is a strong market considering how things are. But you look at steers. Let's look at some 6-weight steers, almost 800 head of them, average 653 at 154.14. That's the average on all of them. Almost 1,300 7-weight steers, average 746 at 145.14. That would be $10 higher than the Southern Plains at least. You just can't get anything like that for a big feeding calf. And then 720 head of 8-weight feeder steers, average 839 at 140.66. Look at some of the heifers, the 6-weight heifers, nearly 1,000 of them, average 654 at 139.46. And on the 7-weight heifers, 729 head of them, average 759 at 133.09. Big sale in Ogallala, Nebraska, had their stock show special. 7,400 head there, and the trends are fairly sharply higher there. It's just, everybody knows that stock show time, they're having stock show specials. The buyers are there, the best consignments are there, even though the mud conditions and things are the way they are. Up in Ogallala, they were close enough. They had some farmer feeders. They had farmer feeder orders there. And like we talked on the previous visit, it's time for those guys to get in. They really don't even want to fool with cattle, but they need to add value to their grain. And if they get some now and go ahead and get them started feeding, then they can maybe get pretty much done with them by the time they need to get into the field and do what they really like to do, which is farm. But Ogallala Livestock, 7,400 head there. Feeder steers as much as $7 higher than last week, and they had a good sale last week with a big run. Feeder heifers, those weighing under 600 pounds, big demand for stocker cattle, under 600 pound heifer calves, as much as $8 higher, and the heavier feeder heifers weighing over 6 were $2 to $5 lower. Look at a quote on some calves out of Ogallala, 95 head, weighed 562 pounds at 190. That's the highest we've seen on some, averaging over 5.5 all week long, and that's extreme western Nebraska there. Look at a few other individual quotes. Five Valleys Livestock Auction in Missoula, Montana. Don't talk about them very often. Going to be up in that country, in Montana country here at the end of next week at the Montana Farmers Union conference there, and going to be speaking at Havre, Montana, for anybody that's in that area that has the ability to go to that. Be sure and come, because I'll be glad to see as many of you as I can. But at Five Valley Livestock in Missoula, Montana, they had 54 head of 644 pound steers, bring 155.25. That's way up north. Another good quote on some cattle I'm sure would be fancy, coming from Shamrock Livestock in O'Neill, Nebraska. 55 head of steers there, weighed 633 at 163.25. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.